Next topic now, which is education in Lagos State, as the Ministry of Education is on a collision course with parents of students in the boarding houses of the 17 model colleges and upgraded secondary schools in the state. Now, this is over a proposed school fees hike, and the parents have condemned any hike in school fees. This, they say, in view of rising inflation across the country. And in this Sunday special, the chairman and officials of the Model Colleges Parents Forum have now accused the school authorities of misappropriation, appealing to Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu for intervention. TVC News' Abiola Sholanke has the report.
On the 7th of July, the Lagos State Ministry of Education met with parents of students in boarding houses in all its 17 model colleges and upgraded secondary schools over a proposed school fees hike. The parents were informed about the government's plan to increase the boarding fees payable by junior and secondary school students from 25,000 to 75,000 naira. The state government attributed this to inflation and rising cost of foodstuff in the markets. The permanent secretary in the State Ministry of Education, Abosede Adelaja, says government calculated that it would take 125,000 naira to feed each child for a term, but the state will subsidize the cost to 75,000 naira. The ministry told parents that if they could not pay the new fee, their wards will be transferred to nearby public secondary schools without boarding facilities. But the parents disagreed with the planned hike and suggestion for transfer of their wards to other schools. Chairman of the Coalition of Chairmen and Secretaries of the Parents Forum for 17 model colleges, Dakbo Dawodu, says from their own research, 18,000 naira was enough to cover the feeding cost of each child and salary payments for the cooks per term. He said parents are only willing to pay 5,000 naira extra on the 25,000 naira to cover emergencies.
What we're talking about is feeding wouldn't take more than 18,000. All other services, all other payments, items of expenditure, be it for the house matrons, because they tell us we are paying for them, for the kitchen staffers, and even to purify the water, because the government is good enough to have provided the infrastructure of water. But to make it drinkable, yes, you've got to go through purifiers there. Everything is consumed and subsumed in the 7,000 naira on top. The 5,000 is just for the contingency of whatever we have not thought.
Dawodu explains that the 200% increase was rejected, and the rejection is not based on plea.
I don't know by what percentage they have gotten from the Office of Statistics that inflation has gotten to be above 200%. No. And we have done our calculations. The 25,000 is way out. Even with the 25,000, we found that 18,000 naira can conveniently feed each of these children in the 3 months, while the remaining 7,000 naira could be used for ancillary services. And thus, we have made a counter proposal of 30,000 naira per child per term, the additional 5,000 naira coming in, because we parents believe we also are part of the government, we are part of this administration, and we have been undertaking interventionist projects in most of these schools for the benefits of our children, and we now want to partner with the state government in getting the best for our school children, so that when we have the additional fund, it will be used to set up school clinics, to buy drugs, and some other items of expenditure for some things that they lack. That is why we have the contingency of 5,000.
He gave another reason why they cannot agree with the proposed increase by government, saying some parents struggle to pay the current 25,000 naira. He asked how the government expects them to cope with this change.
Good people of Lagos State should know that despite the fact that the Lagos State government is keeping up and trying its best with its free education policy. There are some elements within the Ministry of Education that want to put a lie and a lot of spanner into the works. Like we parents understand, if government in their free education policy, they are taking care of all schools and all tuition fees, but are now leaving it, they're now leaving it somewhat optional for those who can afford to pay for the welfare, feeding and welfare of these children in the boarding hostels.
Dawodu said the parents doubted that an increment would make a difference in the quality of food being fed to the children.
When somebody is given this sum of money in trust for our children, turns around, makes a mess of the disbursement, and now does not have the conscience to even give our children the meals that are adequate for them to survive with in the hostels. And the situation is so bad, some of these so-called principals are so petty. I have learned, because we now have a coalition of parents forum chairmen, they go to the extent of stopping parents from coming to inspect dormitories and coming to the dining rooms to look at what the children are being served. That is no more going to take place. There's going to be an amendment, a correction to that I can assure you.
Some parents of the children in the model colleges also aired their view.
Quite all right, we all know that things has increased actually, but not by 500%. And in this case, we all believe that there can be amendments and we can reach an agreement with government. And we believe in our government of the day, especially our governor Sanwo-Olu, he has a listening ear. On behalf of all parents. So please should help us to look into the matter, and we have a minimum agreement.
Now, most of the parents that they cannot afford to pay, they are forcing them to pay now. And then we have studied from our coalition chairman and secretary that the highest money we can pay is 15,000. But all those principals, they refuse to collect it from us, which is not supposed to do. They should look into it, that most of us they cannot pay it. So 25,000 is too much.
The parents appealed to the Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu to do something about the proposed hike and monitor what the administrators are doing with the funds they get.
Respond to it, because we've written to the governor and we've also written to the State House of Assembly. And I know the governor would not want to be such who will be labeled as being anti-masses. The governor would not want to be one who will learn. He may not have read our petition up to now, but I believe with this teleconference or tele-interview, this will get to some of his aides and they will alert him. He wouldn't like the idea that some people are taking the free education scheme in Lagos State for granted, these evil principles, by having to ride hot shot over this amount.
Abiola Sholanke, TVC News, Lagos.
And representing the government at this time now on the program is the Lagos State Commissioner for Education, Folashade Ade-Fisayo. She joins us via Zoom now for more discussion on this issue regarding the fees hike at Lagos State model colleges. Now the parents have spoken. They have outrightly rejected the increment proffered by the government. Mrs. Ade-Fisayo, welcome to the program. But what's your response?
Thank you very much for having us here. Having me here representing the government. Well, we have discussed with them and they acknowledge that. We've met twice, even 3 times, to discuss the fees. I've listened to what they said and one must empathize. Initially, we were going to go for 75,000, but after discussions, we went down to 50. And I will like to add this, that something we've never done before, we are going to start doing. we are going to give each model school subvention, because we actually found that the cost of maintaining them in the boarding house is about 125,000. You know, I don't know why they did their calculations, and I can't imagine a teenager eating 6,000 a month. But I mean, I leave that to them. I'm sure they did their calculations in their own way. This is coming, you know, so what we agreed was that, look, between the 75 and 125, we would subsidize. Now they've insisted on 50. So we will, now we've gone down to 50. So between 50 and 125, we are now going to provide subsidy. So we are actually going to ensure that the children eat well. That is extremely important to us. This was a decision that we took after a lot of thinking. These fees have held constant since 2006. In 2006, we were charging 25,000. In 2021, we are still charging 25,000. In 2006, a bag of rice was well below 10,000. I don't want to exaggerate, but today it's about 25. They keep saying this meal thing. Don't forget, we've done the calculations. A single egg is 80 naira. But we have at 25,000, we are only able to feed a child at 73 naira per meal. That is plainly ridiculous. And therefore, they in fact have had to add a lot more than 25,000. I doubt if they're really paying that much. I think many of them are having to support in a lot of ways. What we are saying is take that away, pay what this 50,000, and then we will make up the difference. Honestly, I empathize with them. It was not an easy decision. But we cannot run the schools that way. And apart from the fact that we are also, we will provide that subsidy, don't forget that it's free education, it's free tuition. They are not paying for teachers. They are not paying WAEC fees. Mr. Governor recently approved nearly R1 billion for WAEC fees for children across the whole state, including children in model colleges. They're not paying for all this. So education is still free, like in all our other schools. So it's just all we need this for is to support, you know, their lives in the boarding house. And this means their feeding, the cleaning, the gardening, the maintenance, the security. And I want to add that Mr. Governor has also invested in 8 of those schools, built new hostels in 8 of these schools. You know how much that would cost? Building hostels for like 200 children and equipping the hostels. So it's not as if we are not doing our bit. We are doing a lot more than we should, because you must remember that this free education, we are offering close to 1 million children. For their own 25,000, apart from the free tuition and all, we are also going to subsidize whatever fee, this 50,000 we are asking them to pay for school.
All right, Mr. Adefisayo, allow me to ask further in the spirit of dialogue and openness, and I'm welcoming your openness even on this subject. But the parents are also alleging that there hasn't been enough accountability on the part of the schools, the certain principals. Of course, there are no names, but then they are also alleging that the funds or the fees they have even paid, the 25,000 they have been paid, haven't been properly managed. How are you working to address these concerns?
That was one of the things we discussed at all our meetings, and I assured them that we will keep a very strict surveillance on the spending of these funds, because apart from the fact that our QA department will be charged with the task, our TGPSs, the district permanent secretaries, will also be charged with the task, and we'll require them to make returns every month. And like I even gave them my number, that I'm open. You can send to me anonymously if you can confirm that your principal is doing so and so. Because I will tell you that many of the principals have been so sacrificial. They are using their own funds. And that is to feed the students and to look after them in many instances, because the money is just not enough. And I have enough proof for that. And many of the schools, too, unless they are being unfair, will tell you that their principal has bent over backwards, has been very sacrificial. So maybe we have a few who are not obeying what you expect them to, but we will be very, very strict. We will not take that for granted. And any whistleblower, like I said, can call me.
All right, Mrs. Adefisayo, let me put you on hold and get reactions to all you have said. Beginning with BKO, now the government has said the fees hike would now be reduced, not from 125, not 125, not 75, but 50,000 naira now. Is that good enough, BKO?
Honestly, I sympathize with both the parents and the teachers, the state government as well. Everyone knows that inflation has been on an uptick in our country. So things are very expensive and it's difficult to feed children properly at 73 naira per day. For many parents, some of them have up to 3 or 4 kids in those schools. So, and some of them are civil servants. So it's difficult to pay. It's really difficult to pay. We have not reached the point when we could say, oh, government could take care or government can take care of everything. All I can appeal for is for both the parents and the state government to come to a middle ground. They've got to come to a middle ground. Since 2006, they've been paying 25,000. At some point, it has to go up in line with current realities. But let the parents and the government come to a middle ground in a manner that both sides will be pleased. That's all I can say.
All right. Well, how fair enough is BKO's position, Sam? Well, government is, proposing, we can still use the word proposal now, but government is proposing double the amount that parents have been paying over the years.
I share the sentiments expressed by our colleague BKO, and that is because the fundamentals don't really look good. We live in this country and we know what the economic stats, are reading. But one thing pleases me here, and that is the fact that there is an ongoing conversation between between parents, school authorities, and the government. And it will seem to me that some understanding, there is an understanding of the issues, and there are shifts in the positions that have been, there have been shifts, on the part of all stakeholders. Just like BKO said, one will encourage that these conversations, go on, and that a middle ground be reached, in the interest of education, not just for our students, but for the society at large. One thing I'd like to add here is that education is one of the key issues, in the talks about human, development index. For me, it's one that I'm really very passionate about, because for any society to make progress, you need to ensure that you're not just educating the populace, but that what is being dished out is indeed quality education, and that for me is what matters. No amount is too much to be committed to education. I don't even think that the minimum is being being considered in most of the budgets across the country. So I would like, just like BK, to see the ongoing conversations reach a position where every party agrees that the right concessions have been made. We're not seeing schools being locked up, and that for me is really very important. Like I said, the fundamentals don't look good at all. We're all parents, we run homes, and we know that the cost of things have indeed climbed.
Indeed. And even government isn't immune to these economic realities, Wale.
Yeah. Well, I think I agree with what you said. There are strong arguments, on both sides. For the parents, some may have lost their jobs. Some have not seen increase in their pay for a very long time. And then they are also operating within a very difficult economic environment. But the same thing with the government. Lagos is facing so much pressure. A lot of people being displaced from northeast, northwest, everybody is coming to Lagos. And there is going to have a lot of impact on provision of social services. These people will use water, they will use light, they will use road. So there is so much pressure on Lagos in the past few years. And if you look at it, if you are talking about feeding children, let's say a term of 90 days, one term. If you make it 75,000, it's going to be 833 naira per day. If it's 30,000, it's going to be 330 333 naira to feed a child per day. If it's 40,000, it's 444 naira per day. This 50,000 naira they are talking about now is just 555 naira. So you imagine yourself, how can a child feed, with 555 naira?
Three square
meters. That's for 50,000.
Yeah, that's 553 naira. It's too small. So, when you look at all these things, and when we are talking about free education is not usually free. The responsibility is usually shifted to other people to pay, for that kind of, for cost. Other countries that have done free education, they tax some other people so that they now pull over that tax to resolve free education. But I think the parents are talking about transparency. What I think should be done is that the parents' association should have a delegate to be part of the monitoring process, so that at least that will be able to satisfy them at the end of the day.
Mrs. Sade Fisayo, you have the final take. But let's not also forget that the state government has also or threatened, or should I say as a last option, if parents can still not afford the 50,000 naira proposal of fee hike, that affected students will go on to other public institutions in Lagos State. What's the implication of that? And again, you've heard all the gentlemen, you've heard them speak in response to your position as government spokesperson on this issue. How do you, conclude on this matter?
Just dialoguing, listening, talking, explaining. No hostility whatsoever. We are all parents as well. We are all parents. The comment was just that, because one parent said, if I cannot pay the fees, what options do I have? And it was like, look, don't forget that in Lagos, we have about 350 junior secondary schools and senior secondary, say 700 in total. So there are options. If you cannot, because all you are paying, all we are asking them to pay is the cost of maintaining the boarding house, not tuition. And in our other schools, they don't pay tuition. So, no, there was no threat. I think I must take exception to that. And then if I can also talk about the fact that they want transparency and delegation, parent delegation being part of it. We have what we call the school-based management committee. That is like the board of governors of the school. Parents are there. They're represented there. And I think on the SBMC, they can make a very strong case for whatever it is they want to do. Because the SBMC, in effect, with the principal, runs the strategic direction of the school. They had board meetings and so on. So they are there. They also have a parents forum. The parents forum has been meeting with us. We are quite pleased to meet with them. And they even have a hierarchy in the parents forum. So we are not hostile to them in any way at all. In any way at all. I want to reiterate again. You see, the 50,000 is not all for feeding. It's actually 80% of it. That is 40,000 out of it. The remainder is for cutting grass, cleaning, security, gas in the school. Just cleaning the boarding house, cleaning materials and so on. Everything we have to do to maintain the boarding house. Right, because in fairness to the other children not in boarding house, they too enjoy everything those ones enjoy. And we are now ready to even subsidize to the tune of 75,000 per child, whereas they pay 50. So it's going to be like we are doing much more than they will be doing. But I thank you very much for listening to us.
And we thank you too very much, Honorable Commissioner for Lagos State, Commissioner for Education, Folashade Ade Fisayo. Thanks a lot for your contributions on this subject. And a big thank you to BKO who joined us. He's still in Port Harcourt. Continue to enjoy your stay. We wish you safe travels when you return back to base. And holding forth, Sami Bemiri and Wale Adeoye, thank you for the robust contributions on the program today.